Korea on the attack, Thailand on the defense. Goes, walk me through it.
Yeah, so Trainwreck we haven't seen in the ACL yet on main stage. I like this map a lot. This is a bit of a newer map in comparison to some of the OGs that we've been playing. I like this map. It is really interesting map because of the sight lines. There's going to be some wide open spaces we're going to have to deal with in the transition between points, so pay attention to some of those. Obviously, vehicles important, but this map has a little bit of everything, kind of similar to trench lines, but more open on this map. So let me know what you think about Trainwreck. I think this is going to be a fun one to watch. Obviously, some of the bridge components are going to be a huge piece of the puzzle on how do you control those. I've seen some really good plays on Trainwreck of holding those bridges effectively and using it as a choke point, so that'll be fun. But Trainwreck is a very interesting map that was added in, again, fairly recently, I guess about half a year ago, 6 months ago, but in comparison to some of the OGs, this is one that likely the teams have a little bit less experience on, potentially, so keep an eye out for that as well. If there's a little bit lack of chemistry, it might just be they haven't played it quite as much as some of the other maps here, Taylor.
Sure, and that could play a bit of an impact. We did see that with Japan. Japan picks Ascension against Korea, thinking it's going to be, a great map for them. It almost was in certain ways, but it turned out to be their last map, unfortunately. Now, for Trainwreck, picked by the refs, I'm curious if the players had a game plan. I assume they did, right? Especially during the qualifiers. I'm sure they had some experience on a competitive esports level on Trainwreck. If they didn't, then they at least know the map, obviously. Some detailed plans coming out in the way that they want to obviously attack the different points. With Thailand starting, or excuse me, with Korea starting on the attacking side, it's almost akin to how it played out yesterday. I believe, Thailand was on the attack first. But anyways, for Korea, I hope this attack goes well. And the reason why, when you're playing a rematch against an opponent that beat you in the previous day, you want to start the series off with the W to gain that confidence, right? Get that energy under you and get your legs under you. If you suffer a loss early on, now you start to have doubts again. Like, man, we've lost 3 straight maps to this team. We've lost three straight games. Can we truly overcome our opponent, which is Thailand? Well, if they win game number 1, they obviously have proven that, and they can do it. Let's get into it. Let's see if Thailand can do it or Korea. Check it loud. We're getting into series number 2.
Welcome to Trainwreck, folks. Here's the thing about Trainwreck. We got vehicles galore, and it starts on the side of the attackers. One of the only maps you get to start with 3 full vehicles off rip. So they're going to be flying in immediately. The attackers trying to use that advantage as fast as humanly possible to break this point open and move on their merry way. And you can already see it. Guess who's in that tank? 95K Wansa is cooking already. He's been the vehicle operator of the day for Korea all day today, top fragging with these vehicles and already continuing to make a name for themselves as the wheelman of the day for Korea. Excited to see them blow this thing wide open and potentially take A in a moment's notice.
You know, Korea, I expect to come out hot and heavy, and the reason why is they're coming off a big win against Japan, but they've also been playing for 4 hours, which means they are warm, they are ready. Thailand, they're coming in cold. This is their first game of the day. They're probably warming up, of course, like in the off stations, but this is their first official match today on broadcast, today on the main stage. So for Korea, they're going to be hitting their shots, and I mean, to their credit, they absolutely are. A, under contention, we've already got a tank under fire onto the A site. Couple of lives have been lost, but nothing to really write home about. I'm liking it. Korea looking pretty strong.
Yeah, and again, I think the biggest things we need to pay attention to here is, 1, can Korea take this point quickly while also keeping their vehicles alive? You're given a boon, you've got to protect it so you can use it later in the map. That is absolutely crucial. And obviously, Winter on your screen, playing Route Man and picking up several in rotation on the way to a high ground position to try to take down more on the actual point itself. So they need to open up a window of opportunity, able to do that with the tank. They've got to stay alive, though, and I know that Thailand is prioritizing shooting these vehicles down as soon as possible. Get them out of the play if you can, sure, but if you can take one down, it's going to be a massive boon for your team now and in the points to come. So prioritizing that, but prioritizing staying on the point Currently, it looks like the Korean forces have swung over to the high ground position. Tactical respawn beacon down at the very least for these squads on the high ground overlooking A. This is just going to be a matter of time. Wipe these couple players on the point, and then you should be able to clean house and be able to get onto the point and start capping. Shouldn't be very difficult at this point, especially with the amount of damage that this tank is able to do from distance.
All right, Korea finally making some moves. A starting to get decapped. The defensive forces from Thailand are sparse. They're starting to thin out, and that's because of the tank, but also Korea has effectively moved in, Wolfpack together, and outslayed the defensive forces from Korea. They're on the respawn. They're starting to move in, and miraculously, they managed to even take back A just a little bit before it ticks back over towards red in the favor of Korea, who now have a great foothold on it, and that tank is putting in work. As, man, Thailand cannot get close. As soon as they do try to get in, they try to get center of A, they get deleted by the tank's missiles, and with A halfway captured, I think Thailand has to make a decision, continue to throw lives at this, or go ahead and back away and set up defensively.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to be setting up defensively right now. This point is lost. Honestly, having a tank this early is game-changing. Finally, a couple people swinging around the corner. I mean, this is what you wanted to do, frankly. If you could take this tank out, again, you need more than two. There's just engineers in the area. You're not going to do enough damage. Here's a quick look, by the way. Obviously, 95k wants at the top, using that tank. 15 kills already. Pay attention to those score lines, because remember, you can call in more vehicles once you rack up more score, as well as other things like guided missiles, artillery strikes, etc. But A quickly taken, coming in with one life short of full, and moving on to B pretty quickly. Now, this map is really interesting here because of the push from A to B. It is wide open on this hilltop, and this is where high ground is going to prove to be very effective. We'd love to listen in to the Korea cops.
연막 이어주세요. 연막 있는 중. 올라가고 깼어. 오른쪽부터 여러분, 오른쪽부터 밀어 힘으로 찍어. 가운데 이제 가운데 다리로. 왼쪽에 엔지니어 다리. 중고진님 오른쪽으로. 확인했습니다. 상대 차륜 능선에 있다. 아래 컨테이너 쪽에 있어요. 확인. 뒤집 좀 클리어하고 합니다. 대기. 뒤부터. 딱히 지뢰야. 차륜 저희 언덕 쪽에 있어요. 저희 언덕.
This is exactly what I was talking about when I talked about this map. The transition from A to B, they smoke and run, do a full flank swing around to the bridge. This is a power position to hold, and this is going to open up their attack onto B much more cleanly than going through the choke point underneath the bridge. Well executed. They've played this map before. Obviously, they had a strategy going in, and it's working thus far.
Going across the bridge, just where things start to get pretty tight. You have the trains, obviously, for cover, but you've got to push down some very distinct choke points, and you know that you're most likely going to get gunned down once you do. But to Korea's credit, they push straight through the top. They make way, and they are looking to penetrate B Hill very, very shortly. But you do have Darkstar from Thailand, the main guy with the vehicles, who's obviously going to be in that lab, who's going to be moving up, and he's going to be a huge thorn in the side of Korea. So if I'm Korea, I'm looking to deal with him as soon as possible, get rid of the vehicles, and that's something that Korea did very well against Japan earlier in the first series of the loser bracket today. But that's something that they failed to do against Thailand, and why they lost so convincingly yesterday during their semifinal matchup in semifinal 2. So for Korea this time around, I want them to focus on Darkstar. I want them to focus on Thailand's vehicles, take them out, and have a much better chance of winning. So far, Korea is looking pretty good.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they've got a lot of momentum, and they still got those vehicles from their first initial attack, and so they're able to swing up here aggressively, and they've actually got a tank destroyer of their own, so SFV, very valuable in these fights, and it looks like, oh my goodness, it looks like Thailand's vehicle is in the mix on the backline and somehow not dead yet, just getting right up onto these players. They've completely eliminated and lose it. It does look like the Korea team has taken out the vehicle finally, which is a huge win. They've lost a ton of value and a ton of ground to stand on, and that entire push that pushed over to the bridge to play the high ground completely thwarted. But at the very least, I guess they traded out a vehicle. could have been worse by, I guess, one vehicle. So well done from Korea, but also they've got to figure out what their attack plan is now that the actual push over the bridge didn't work. And now they're just kind of playing this low ground around this middle hill, playing this kind of left side, trying to group up and then make a push.
A lot of red on the screen as they take over the hillside, something that Japan tried to do multiple times and got too caught up. Let's listen to Thailand and hear how they're sounding.
เฮ้ยเราขวาเยอะมากเลยตอนนี้กระจายกำลังให้ดีนะทุกคน
ตอนนี้แล้วไม่มีใครดูซ้ายนะระวังกันด้วยนะไม่ต้องมาขวาหมดก็ได้
ขอดังๆขอเอเนจีหน่อยทุกคนครับผมจะบอกว่าทุกคนผมขอพูดก่อนตอนนี้คือผมสื่อสารกับใครในเกมไม่ได้นะทุกคนให้จับบ็อกช่วยก่อนนะเพราะว่าตอนนี้ผมไม่ได้ยินเสียงในเกมเลยผมเล่นแบบโอเคช่วยกันทุกคน
A lot of energy coming out from the Thailand side, as to be expected. They're obviously playing their hearts out. They're trying to go for gold, and they understand that they can hold Korea back on this B site. Well, that's one victory for themselves, and that puts them that much closer to moving forward to grand finals to play for $40,000 and potentially be the first team ever, at least when it comes to Delta Force Esports, to beat this Chinese team that has been so dominant, not only throughout this tournament, but also through the qualifiers.
Yeah, and again, it looks like the same strategy being used by Korea. We want the bridge. We've got to take the bridge. And at the same time, they're keeping their vehicles back and peppering from a distance. It's not no holds barred right now. It's not pedal to the metal. They've got time. They've got 125 lives for this sector. And arguably, this B flag, pretty hard to capture. It's pretty wide out in the open. And this bridge provides some visual cover from above. Dropping down onto the point, though, is where it gets a bit scary. So eventually, when the team is ready to make the push, when they feel like they've secured the bridge, they're calling in their vehicles, get on this point with us, let's blow this thing wide open, let's all drop down and start capping. And I think that's the decision they're making right now. Vehicles coming into the backside, clearing out the push. This is going to open up a window of opportunity for Korea to drop down from the bridge onto the point. These vehicles are menaces in the back line, not only causing a distraction, but picking up a ton of kills to boot. As long as they don't lose these vehicles immediately, this could be a window of opportunity for Korea to jump down. And it's looking like as many smokes as you want to throw on that vehicle, there's just too many Thailand players spawning around that vehicle. It goes down. They lose one of their two. And although it was a window of opportunity, it seems that that window was shut immediately in the face of Korea, as they only have a couple bodies on the point, which is doing a little bit of work. But I can only imagine this Thailand squad is going to be able to answer back and defend it.
Yeah, Dead Dog was doing a wonderful job up top on the bridge. But yeah, as far as Thailand goes, they're holding B down very well. Finally, an attempt from Korea from the top of the bridge down to B, plus a Lav are going to be on the B site. They're going for the capture. Still very healthy when it comes to overall lives at 116. If they can get this capture shortly, they're going to be sitting pretty going into the C points. Finally, it's going to be decap fully. That's the first time. It took a long time to get here, but that helps, doesn't it? Having the tank on the high ground.
Yeah.
Plus, you got the lab down low, as well as the foot troops to encompass B. Yeah, Korea's got this. We're going to be going on, I'm sure of it.
Yeah, but look how many of these Thailand players are getting on the point, but nobody's able to take down Wanso. One of the crazy things about the tank destroyer that he's driving is that it's just so dang fast. His maneuverability is impressive, his driving skill is impeccable, and his slaying power unmatched. Wanso MVP right now for Korea to keep their dreams alive of taking B and getting revenge on this Thailand squad. And well, don't worry, have you missed Saniva? They're back on the point, shield bashing and getting on the objective. That is what Saniva is all about. How long can I soak up this objective time? How long can I be here to take this point? Very well executed here from Korea in order to spin some lives. Sure, they're down to 107, but overall still able to take this point, likely on the back of some of these respawn beacons, as they're able to grab this point, and we're going to be moving on to point C here shortly.
Yeah, very nice. We take a look at the stats. Wanza still the elimination leader at 29, but Meme has showed his hand. 27 revives OAH, excuse me, with 25. Well done from those two, keeping their troops into the action, or keeping their troops in the action, I should say. And that's why they're so healthy at 161 currently going into C1 and C2, where the true challenge begins. Let's listen in to Korea.
이거 정면 힘싸움 하죠? 정면 힘싸움. 시원에서 정면 힘싸움 할게요. 시원에서. 수리해봐. 갑시다. 시원으로 갈 거예요. 시원으로.
여기 잡아야 돼.
앞에 많아요. 조심.
오른쪽 많다 그래도 시원 갈 겁니다. 저희 오른쪽 많다 해서 시원 갈 거예요.
네.
연막 이어주세요. 연막.
상대 라브 위치 모릅니까?
라브 위치 몰라요.
살리고 갈게.
여러분 저희 너무 시트로
왼쪽
집중되는데 왼쪽 시원으로 더 틀어야 돼.
나도 오른쪽. 제일 끝에.
중고진이만 가운데 남아주고.
Those are the critical moments. I think you can hear from the command's voice and their tone that basically it's a communication of, okay, where do we want to enter to? It's much less chaotic because there's one mission. We need to get to a point where we can address one of these sides. And they've probably already discussed with the squad leaders as well, hey, we want to go for C1 or C2. They've probably already picked, I don't know which one it'll be, of which one they want to go for first. This is the classic strategy of the attack. We need to take one of these points, get stabilized, get all of our bodies onto the point, and then make a push from there, especially in points like this where C1 and C2 aren't that far away and are also inside. So this is the thing about Trainwreck that I like a lot. You're getting a chance to look at all the different types of terrain and the different ways you can take fights. We've had these wide open spaces in A and B. Once you get to C, you've got interior building fights, which means some of these vehicles are going to be a little bit less valuable on these points in terms of entry fragging and blowing holes wide open onto these buildings to cover them. Yes, they're important, like you can see right here, important for covering fire, or important for shelling, for people trying to rotate. But if you let the attack get C1 or C2, all of a sudden the vehicles have a little bit less importance on the map until people begin to rotate.
This is going to be the hardest task for Korea. Thailand has such an advantage, in my opinion, on C1 and C2. Wow. If they lose one, okay, cool. They can turtle up in the interior cover and hold Korea at bay, hold them off. But also, transitioning from C1 to C2 is not going to be easy because they're two distinct buildings. So if Thailand can find a way to penetrate one of those buildings, they can easily retake, I say easily, but they can potentially retake C1, C2.
Ooh.
Does it get down? Yes, it does. Oh, no, it doesn't. I thought for sure it was going to land, but once again, we're seeing these vehicles get punished immediately as soon as they start to parachute down. That's what you have to do. Get rid of them. Even if they're not as effective on C1 and C2 inside the buildings, as you were saying, you still don't want them to be on the map, right? But luckily for Thailand, they do manage to get another lab down that they're going to be able to use. But look at Korea. They have not been able to make any progress towards C1 or C2. Thailand's defense has been incredible.
Yeah, and I want to be very clear. These vehicles still have a lot of value on the map. It's just on the actual points themselves, you're not going to have massive windows of opportunity for the vehicles to be on the point. And so they are going to be really crucial for the rotation between points. But it's a great call out. Once the attackers get one, the vehicles are going to be lying in wait, basically training for the cross. And so you're going to have a lot of smoke and runs. But now we get into some CQB combat as we are inside these points, making quick work of the defense. Korea on the move. And I've got to remind people at home, you might be like, wow, Korea's playing fantastic today. They look like the better team. These two teams faced off yesterday, and it wasn't close. Thailand obliterated them. So to see a new map and, frankly, a new Korea team on the map is really cool to see. And that's what I'm talking about training, getting better, learning your strategies, learning your opponents, and then doing quick work to figure it out and make this game much more competitive. This is really fun to watch. As already Korea said, C2 is open. Let's make a move. And here we are fighting inside. Vehicles on the outside trying to make a difference, but it's not a ton.
All right, respawn beacon down. That's going to be huge for C2. C2 has been captured, but it's still being contested. Thailand are full sending their troops in to try and break apart the defensive setup now from Korea on the attack. Question is, can they find success? There's a couple players who are going to be down, but they could get picked back up for the medics. Got to get rid of that respawn beacon. In the meantime, on the outside, you got the labs fighting it off. And it is going to be Thailand moving in. going for the full sins. And oh, wow, I think he's actually going to lose it. Just a tick away from being destroyed. It's the little guy versus the big guy. The big guy will lose.
Yeah, Tank Destroyer just so strong firepower-wise and just speed. If you get the loft to miss a couple times, you're going to win that 8 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10. Very well executed from the Korea side to clean up another vehicle on the side of Thailand. Korea with a huge advantage here. Vehicles getting picked up, kill after kill, and point after point. They are fighting for position on C2, but finally, with a look here from Thailand, they've been able to battle back interior and win the fight on the inside. Here's a quick look again at Thailand calling in another vehicle, just barely making it to the ground, and they're able to stay alive for a moment as they take a strike. Let's listen in.
ผมมีนู1ลูกมีใครมีเกิดคอมโบกับนูผมไหมถ้าสมมติเราจะเทคไซคืน
ผมมีไม่ไหวใครได้มีรับทราบน้องหรือจะให้ผมเก็บลูกได้ใกล้ได้ตรงกัน
วางที่ไหนพี่
ได้เยอะมาก
นัดที่หนึ่งมีรถถังนัดที่หนึ่งมีรถ
ไม่ทีหนึ่งนะเมื่อกี้ทีหนึ่งก็มี
ฮัลโหล
ก็จะแตกแล้วก็จะแตกแล้วเลยวะฮัลโหลหน่วยคอหน่อย
ไอ้คนเป็นหัวสะคอนพูดได้ไม่ดีหน่อยดิฮัลโหลครับหัวสควอตพูดอยู่หัวสควอตคนอื่นอ่ะที่พูดในเกมอ่ะพูดได้ไหนปะ
Unfazed, not worried, clear communication, sounds good to me. Unfortunately, yes, the tug of war has begun and they're passing these points back and forth, but C2 has been recaptured by Thailand, and now it's truly sitting on a nice edge, 50-50 right now, of trading these points. And this is exactly what Korea needed and wanted to do. They want to fully capitalize on C1 and hold it down. And yet again, I'm not kidding. This Korean player inside the tank destroyer is an absolute utter menace. This thing is flying around the map, blowing everyone up. Finally gets cut down. Got a hair too aggressive, but probably worth the transition there and the trade, because I'm going to be honest, they were getting so much value out of that tank destroyer, Taylor.
Oh, without a doubt, the value was tremendous. It takes down what, a lab, takes down a tank, I believe. Yeah, no, without a doubt, the value is there. And there's probably going to be another one coming down onto the map, so be on the lookout for it for sure. I like how someone in the Twitch chat said David versus Goliath, and David won the fight. That's exactly it, right? Big guy versus little guy. C1 has been captured for a good while now, but the question is, can Korea put resources over towards C2, and will Thailand continue to throw themselves at C1, trying to retake it and potentially distract Korea? Because, you know, after all, you know, take a life here, take a life there, that's less lives Korea's going to have ultimately to play around with, not only on this these two objectives, but even maybe potentially on the next one. More vehicles come in, which are going to be great for the transition, but the guided missiles coming down, Goj. Question is, whose is it, and will it have any effect?
That first guided missile could change things up. Here's a quick look at it. Where will it land? Right on top of C2 and gets absolutely nothing for it. Not yet, at the very least. A couple holes blown open in the side of C1, though, is going to open up a window of opportunity for the vehicles to get a little bit more involved through these line of sights if they choose to do so. And with this guided missile, maybe it didn't do anything, but maybe it zoned people off enough to where these teams are trading points. As you can see, Korea swings over to C2 completely uncontested for the most part. And yes, it's a trade on C1, but it's not a good one. Thailand on their heels right now, losing both. And here comes another guided missile. 67 lives remaining. Korea needs to step up, and it looks like they're doing that right now. C1 back to the side of Korea. C2 about to go to Korea. Will this be a difference maker in the final moment? No, because it's a Korean missile. It picks up one, and it closes this one out. We have moved through C. Where are we headed next? It is time to go to point D with 100 lives on the table. Taylor, I don't know if it's enough to take point D here in Trainwreck, but at the very least, they still have an opportunity to win this map, and that might be all they need. I'm excited about it, Taylor.
Wands at 42 continues to be the top slayer for the roster of Korea. Is it enough lives? Well, only Korea can answer that question, but I've been impressed thus far. Let's listen in.
정리하려.
아니 가 그냥 가.
돌차
우리
나왔어요,
돌차
돌차.
2개예요. 우리 돌차 2개예요. 저희 돌차 저희 2대예요. 저희 이거 다리 정면으로 그냥 뛰지 마시고 오른쪽으로 감아서 다리 위로 가죠.
돌차 안 타면
다리
터져요.
아래로. 다리 아래로. 다리 위에 많습니다.
차량 하늘에 차량.
하늘에 차량. 하늘 어디에요? 가운데. 나이스. 나이스. 이거 가운데
나 지금
저희 상대팀 두 군데 있어요. 두 군데. 오른쪽에
I mean, great listening.
Yeah.
Obviously very focused. And desire to win this is starting to grow. D1 and D2, the final objectives, the final chance for Thailand to hold on and potentially take game number 1, but also the same goes for Korea to win an attacking side against Thailand. I mean, let's go. You know, as far as I'm concerned, Korea has already made leaps and bounds in terms of progress from their performance yesterday against Thailand to what we are seeing now.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of my favorite things about those listen-ins is you could tell it was clear, it was calm, it was a transition point of let's move up, let's try to figure out how we're going to address these points. And then all of a sudden they saw a vehicle being called in and the comms were insane. They're like, shoot it. And they blew it up and celebrated that win. So great to hear the comms, to know what they're prioritizing. And of course, a very big priority is taking down those vehicles that people call in because of their score lines and being able to execute those before they can hit the ground. A big moment. But we'll take a look. This is where things get really interesting with Trainwreck because all of our other points have been what I call laterally expansive. You have C1 and C2 next to each other. D is very different than most every other map even. And yet again, this time an answer back from the Thailand side. That was an M1 tank. That is an expensive call-in, getting absolutely zero value. So a great shout here and an answer back the other way. Nobody gets a vehicle. We don't get a vehicle, nor do you. Constant blowing up. Very well executed. Look how far away, by the way, Wanza is. Way back on that little hill, just having this overarching angle to try to take down these vehicles being called in. But what I was saying is this is, instead of a lateral, this is like a linear expanse, D1 to D2. You have to go through basically D1 to get to D2. A very different style of play that I tend to find very difficult for attackers if they're not very organized to be able to puncture. But a guided missile could open things up, and it looks like another Korean guided missile only picks up one here, Taylor.
Yeah, only picks up one, but might be a deterrence. I don't know. Might have a bit of an impact. Tank down. Vehicle also. So now we have two vehicles onto the side of Korea that hopefully will have a bit of an impact, especially if they get onto the bridge and be free and clear to lock in one of the choke points, which it seems there's going to be two, right? There's the right and left side, at least, of the D1 position, but in the meantime, you look forward. Korea does have a good amount of priority and a good amount of space in front of them to get onto at least D1. But, you know, the thing is, you go back to the first bridge attack, Goj, and Korea stayed on top for a long time before they finally got the courage, or at least the wherewithal, to drop down onto the position, I believe, of A and try and get the capture. And it took them so long. I hope they don't run into the same issue, because you could bleed a lot of lives if you're a bit too decisive. But I think they're going to attack this point a lot quicker than they did before.
Yeah, and obviously this is the namesake of the map. It's a train wreck here, and there's a wide open space in the center of this bridge. It's really fun to play on the high ground here because you're able to shoot down and have a decent bit of cover from the sides. I really love this map design, but it does prove to be quite difficult for the attackers because even though they have got an angle to cross, the defense can set up underneath and not be not too much of a danger, as long as they understand that the above is the part that they have to worry about. And so the people that are actually going to get paid in these fights are the people that are playing the off angles. You saw one of our Thai players on defense way out on the side with, I believe, a mini 14, just peppering these players from a position where they're likely not going to shoot back because they're getting shot from down below anyways. They got to seek cover. He's got the off angles, able to pick up probably several, so watch out for that. And then a classic play here, Korea in an armored transport vehicle trying to swing around the backside, drop some players off, and it's Dead Dog, the commander, with a couple other players on the flank, making a big aggressive move to try to either draw fire for their team so they can drop down, and as they lose it, I don't know how much value they're going to get, but I like the play regardless. This could at least relieve some breathing room for D1, or maybe make a play for D2. You can see a couple players putting a little bit of pressure on a D2, but overall it feels like that attack was pretty much thwarted by the side of Thailand.
It's getting tough for Korea, for sure. They've made great strides, leaps and bounds from their performance yesterday, but is it enough to defeat the top dogs of Thailand, the only team to put China at brink of defeat throughout the qualifiers and obviously this LAN event? A lot of pressure up top for the side of Korea. You can see them bringing in vehicles. They've taken down several members of Thailand on the bridge itself, but they're also coming in through with their reinforcements, including the LAV. Overall, D1, D2 still very healthy. Thailand in full control. Korea trying to send all their troops down the bridge, and Thailand's meeting them head on. And in fact, you got a couple of members going straight up the wreckage to face Korea head on. And if you look at the elimination feed, Thailand is winning those fights.
Yeah, massive wins in the kill feed here from Thailand, and yeah, obviously individual plays can stand out. I saw Papercut cleaning up several in transition. And we take a look, D1 finally at jeopardy for the first time pretty much this entire fight. 47 lives, but they've got to capture both of these nearly at the same time if they want a chance to win. And I think that's just going to be too tall of a task. Obviously, the linear progression of these points makes it quite difficult. One of the things you have to prio is your respawns. Where can you respawn? Can you have teammates that are alive, not in fight? Probably not. And as guided missiles come in, again, as always, they can change the game. Will this be our first Thai missile in a while? No, another Korean missile takes out 2, trying to open up D2 at least a hair so that somebody can make a play on either point. But a Thai missile follows up. Gun 2K blows up D1, cleaning out the point at least enough to where they're not going to take it immediately.
39 lives remaining. D1 starting to get capped. Korea looking good. They got to push through. They don't have a lot of lives to deal with, but they have just enough in order to get a victory and take it away from Thailand, who's been so strong. Sounds like another guided missile is going to be coming in very shortly. Question is, who's it going to be? And how much of an effect is it going to have? Missiles so far haven't really done too much, to be quite honest with you. We do see Meme and Seiko from Korea, 2 very talented members who's going to be pushing up the left-hand side towards D2. Here comes the missile. Where's it going? Straight on the D2, and that's going to be a Korean missile that will at least pick up 1 member from Thailand.
Yeah, thing to remember here is that a lot of times these missiles use zoning techniques in order to clear the point so we can make a push. The problem is when that missile's called in, you can see all of Thailand just backed up and it missed just about everybody, and they still have pressure on D2. So albeit a decent zoning principle, not a great time to call that in unless you got real lucky and people didn't back out. But this is professional esports. You can't imagine this is going to happen. Let's listen in some big moments here in the final hour.
오케이 나 가능
미사일 썼어? 오케이.
저희 티켓 소모장이에요.
디콘 되시는 분? D2 발포 써주세요. 디콘 되시는 분?
저희 D1도 리테이크 당하고 있어요.
디원 차세요. 디원 막는 중.
Well, great comms. They're trying to trade points. You can see Korea and Thailand swinging the other way as all of a sudden Korea says, we're going to take D2. It's time to move. Another missile coming in. Could it change the game on D2? And it absolutely does. Holy cow. Thailand missile drops almost everybody on that point. That's got to be 9 people or so that it picked up in transition on D2, which should relieve the pressure to a point where Thailand's going to be able to hold this one down. It may go to overtime, but a monumental effort from a guided missile opens things up, and another one strikes onto D1 just to make sure that none of the Korean players can hop on that point, and they're going to recapture it.
Recapture it indeed. 3 lives remaining. Korea looks to suffer their first loss in the series against Thailand. Still have a chance to come back, but they're going to have to force a game 3 if they want that to be a possibility. But again, give them their flowers where they're due. Korea played very, very well, much better than they played yesterday against this same very team of Thailand. But the reality is, as I said at the beginning, Game 1 is about gaining momentum. And unfortunately for Korea, they don't get the momentum that they desperately needed. So they have now lost 3 consecutive times in 2 days against this Thailand roster. But now that they do transfer over towards defense, Goj, I think, especially given D1 and D2 and how difficult those two sites are to lock in, if Korea can play defensively very well like they did against Japan, Game 3, much within the possibilities.
I think